Hi guys. So I want to talk to you a little bit about performance, and in this case, it's actually performance, like in computer science performance, and not like in a more social manner performance for use and all that stuff. Anywho, so there is, and not just in React land, but I'm gonna use this as the context for my little rant here. There is a lot of people who work in the performance industry, or they are in the performance communities, and there is this hype around making things as performant as you can possibly get them. And one of the frameworks called Preact, for example, is pretty much about that very thing. They're trying to, like, the project is it's in essence React. It is React, but more lightweight, and like, trust me, if you go to npm today and you like just word search lightweight, you're gonna hit almost the entire database, I think, because everybody's about performance, lightweight, all that stuff. And it's great. I mean, it is great that people are thinking about these things, but I want to make the argument that I think that we're missing something that is a little bit more important than things being as lightweight as possible and as performant as possible. And I want to tell you about something. It's actually a discussion I had with my colleague. So he was implementing a on scroll function for basically a scroll event that was going to. I'm not. It doesn't matter what exactly it was going to do, but it was fair. It was not. It was fairly lightweight. It wasn't really something overly sophisticated, but in essence, what he did was that he used a function which is universally known as debounce, and the idea is it's basically a circuit breaker pattern where you tell it that, all right, you're going to fire off this code at certain intervals, and the idea for his idea was that he needed this because the on scroll is notoriously bad. Like most things you do on scroll is going to be quite a it usually takes a lot of memory and processing power to use that, because on scroll is such a very volatile, it fires like a lot in general. And it used to be the case. And I told him, like, think about this, like, make sure, like, before you start over optimizing, it's not really over optimizing, but your mindset should be like, check that there is a problem before you assume that there is a problem. And because some people, like, I don't know, like, I get the sensation that a lot of people think that, like, the browser and JavaScript is this fragile, like, completely unperformant thing that you can't do anything with, and they try to be clever and do like clever things. Some people say, oh, use the for loop instead of a for each on the array because it's more performant. And I'm like, you're talking like you're working with, like, it's like you have you think you have a horse and carriage, but it's just pretty powerful. You basically, and it was a long time since JavaScript, and the performance basically became a nuclear reactor. I mean, it's gone quite far. And I showed him a few websites where, and we investigated. We looked at this. I can't remember the page now, but there's a very nice CV where you basically, and you've seen these before. You scroll through the CV and it does all these fancy animations and graphics and all that stuff. And we dove in. The frame rate was 60 frames per second, no debounce, worked perfectly. Now, this is a corner case, I admit, but still, like, we actually checked the values and we saw that, well, it didn't really matter. So what I'm trying to capture here is that go for simplicity and maintainability before you go for performance, because there are people out there who are, like, really good at performance, and they're, in general, like, my rule is this: if you provide me a really nice, if you are a specialist on performance, you're really good at that stuff and you're passionate about it, great for you. And then you give me something that you want me to use in my code, and you are, regardless of how good you are at the performance stuff, usually forced to provide me, who is this simple little nobody, a simple API that I can consume, so it makes it easier for me. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to make my life easier or improve it somehow. It's been a long time since, you know, you could just churn out like these scholar level super frameworks that are so complex that almost nobody can use it. I mean, look at React and Angular and all these things. Like, they give you an abstraction layer or a framework to work within, and then under the hood they have really brilliant engineers taking care of the performance for us normal people, you know. And that's the way that things, at least in JavaScript land, works today. I mean, if React was super performant but the API was really horrible, most people wouldn't even bother with it. And I think that there's a lot of truth in this idea that, you know, that some people overestimate the value of top-notch performance. There are absolutely situations where top-notch performance is important, but what I'm trying to say here is that let there be a problem before you're solving a problem, because otherwise you're spending time doing something that may not even matter in the long run. And there are some ideas around like timings, and like we have, if you Google and you go for, it's a concept called Rails, or Rail, not Ruby but Rail, and look for performance. Like, these letters represent like different categories of delays that we as humans are like, we feel okay about. It's, you know, you've heard it before. You have 1 second load time and about 100 milliseconds response time on an animation or a drag and drop or something before people notice a difference. And those values are there. And I mean, if you come and tell me that, oh, I can give you this super little extra performance that pulls that number even further like lower, my natural response is going to be, why? What? It's over. In my opinion, it's over engineering. It's you know, every little bit matters, but I keep saying that, like, if you, I honestly, that's what I found, at least. If you follow my 2 rules, keep it simple and keep it maintainable, so that it's easy, like, you know, loose coupling and all that good stuff, so it's easy for you to switch out code or throw away code. That if you do that in general, if you then realize that, hey, I need to performance optimize a little bit here, that's actually easier. But the reverse, in my experience, has never been true. I've seen a lot of code that is really, like, they have to, like, the guy who wrote it, he has to walk me through it because it's really sophisticated. It does a lot of fancy stuff, but it's not easy to change. So, okay, and he makes the argument, well, this is the way you should do it because it's so more performant. And I go, okay, hopefully you're going to stay in this company forever and maintain this, because nobody else understands what's going on. So don't forget that, you know, it's not always about performance.